which we are hearing harrowing stories of survival from those who lived through the wildfires. Each story a testament to the grit and fortitude of those who faced choking smoke, exploding embers, and scorching heat. Annelise Cochran, a Lahaina resident, you see here, clinging to an ocean wall for 7 hours before being rescued. That's a silhouette of her, and she joins us now from Maui, outside the shelter where she's been living for the past few days. Annelise, it's so good to see you. We've heard repeatedly from person after person that there were no warning sirens, no alerts of any kind, that everyone was caught by surprise. Was it the same thing for you?
Yeah, I did not hear any alarms for our normal system that should tell us that there's an emergency incoming. We also did not receive any text to evacuate. However, one of my neighbors upstairs from me did receive a text that there was an evacuation notice further up the mountain from us, which I think is dangerous because we actually felt like we were safe because of that message that we had seen.
Eventually, you saw the fire encroaching really fast. You grabbed two of your neighbors and fled in your car. How did you end up at the rock wall at the beach?
I had to drive through pitch black smoke. I drove completely by memory down to Front Street where I knew we would be close to the water. And as I got closer to the water, I could tell that the smoke was clearing some. We could see, but there was a gridlock of cars and the cars weren't going to be able to get through. And that's when we knew we would have to get into the ocean.
You got into the ocean and found out there were a lot of other people, dozens of other people in the ocean too. How many of you were in the water?
It's almost impossible to know because the smoke was so intense. When I'm seeing the video footage nowadays, it's easier to see in the videos than it was in person because for the most part our eyes were closed. But there was probably at least 30 people in the water when I got there, and there was about 40 of us that were rescued off the rock wall at the end of the night.
And you literally had nowhere else to go. It was the only place that wasn't on fire.
Right. I describe it as a horseshoe of fire closing in on us.
I spoke last night with one man who said he was forced at times to put his head under the water because the smoke was so intense. Was it anywhere similar for you?
I soaked all of my clothing so that the embers wouldn't catch my clothes or my hair on fire, and that included the mask that I was breathing through was wet. But especially when the cars began to explode, me and my neighbor that I was with, Edna, put our faces as close as we could to the surface of the water because it was the only spot that we could find a fresh breath of air.
How deep and out in the water were you?
I stayed incredibly shallow. I stayed only a few feet into the water, just deep enough that I could kind of lay down and submerge my body up to my neck. I was scared in the moment of losing control of the situation and not being able to make it back to land when I needed to. And so I stayed in the shallows so that I could keep making the best of both situations, being on land and in the water. But many people chose to drift much farther out past the surf break.
I was going to say, you did say that you saw a few people try and swim out to another beach. You say you didn't want to because you were afraid of getting caught in rip currents, and that there were tiger sharks that are hunting at night normally.
You know, tiger sharks are not something that anybody should normally fear in a normal situation. If you're going and snorkeling on a beautiful, calm reef, that's not the area that sharks are interested in. What you do have to worry about is at dusk and dawn, as there's less light, as well as in murky water, as in all of the ash that we had, and very surf heavy water. And it was very heavy winds that night. So it was the perfect environment for tiger shark hunting. And so for a variety of reasons, I didn't feel comfortable going much too deep into the ocean.
At some points, you were feeling hypothermic?
Yeah, after about 5 hours being out there, I was shaking very badly. And so I ended up climbing back up over the ravine and huddling actually as close as I could to the fire comfortably to warm my body again.
I got to ask you, Annelise, what kept you focused? I mean, at some point you were telling our producer you were dipping in and out of consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about my family was a huge part of that, and I thank God for the woman that was with me, Edna. We constantly reminded each other of things all night. She always told me which direction to look when the wind would change. When I would cough, she would remind me to spit out what I was breathing in, and we kept each other awake. So whenever we were holding each other's hands in the water, we would remind each other every few minutes that we had to wake up and that there was people waiting for us.
You've been at the shelter now for a few days. Are you getting everything you need? We keep hearing from people on Maui saying we're not. How about you?
Yeah, so we're pretty lucky. We do have a lot of great supplies coming in, but I think one of the reasons that we're seeing a lot of these supplies come in is we're working very closely with our community on the outside to funnel the supplies in that we need.
Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.